The Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York is more than one of the largest Christian churches in the world. It's also a house of worship that uses the arts to communicate to its worshippers and visitors. I came here to see a traveling exhibition organized by Caravan, which has been installed in the chapels and passageways of this magnificent structure. Amen, a Prayer for the World, is on exhibit in New York at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, now through November 23rd. It is one of the artistic programs of Caravan, which was started in 2009 in Cairo, Egypt, as an interfaith arts festival, and which has since grown into a global effort to encourage bridge building through the arts. Founder of Caravan, Reverend Paul Gordon Chandler, believes the arts can serve as an effective medium of respect, understanding, sharing, and even friendship between the cultures of the East and West. I spoke with the Reverend by Skype to discuss this exhibit in more detail. Reverend Chandler, thanks so much for speaking with us. Can you give us a little background on your inspiration for founding Caravan?
I grew up in West Africa, where in a country where the arts were very prominent, such as both the visual art and the other mediums of art, like music, and literature, and film. Youssou N'Dour, for example, one of the singers from West Africa, someone who grew up in my neighborhood. So I grew up around that. I also grew up as a Christian within a Muslim context, and most of my friends were Muslim. And I would see the tension that existed at times. And as a young man, I always remember thinking there has to be another way. It wasn't really until living in Cairo where we began to put the two together, my love for the arts and this idea of bridging between creeds and cultures related to the Middle East, and by that largely the monotheistic faiths, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism.
Right.
So we started Caravan as, at that time, an interfaith arts festival in Cairo, involving Eastern and Western art, Middle Eastern and Western artists, and it really took off. The response surprised us all, which led to another festival and another, and finally it evolved into really an NGO, in a sense, to simply give it some structure, because they were popping up all over the place, this idea of using the arts to bridge between faiths. Especially faiths related to the Middle East and the West.
And for this exhibit on men, how did the theme of prayer evolve?
As I was talking to a number of the Muslim artists in Egypt, they had this fascination with Amun and the ancient pharaonic god, who in many ways, prior to Akhenaten and Abraham, was the first to be the one to, in a sense, focus as kind of a virtual monotheism that was developing around Amun, because he was so supreme within the divinities and the Godhead at that time. Then there's this tendency in parts of the Middle East to relate Amun to the word Amen, or Amin, which of course closes Christian, Muslim, and Jewish blessings and prayers. And that's kind of what led into this idea of prayer is a commonality, regardless of one's faith tradition and how they see prayer. So we have 4 fiberglass sculptures, as you know. Each one can represent one of the monotheistic faiths, but it's done in such a way that it also represents all of them. And then there's a 4th figure that is a kind of a universal figure in the sense of expressing the wonderment and awe and maybe even gratitude at human existence. And that's the one that's standing with the arms out and looking up. So they, in a sense, they represent us all, but they also specifically represent those faiths that come out of the Middle East.
And Amen has been traveling around the globe for a while now. What are some of your impressions?
This one started at the Museum of Modern Art in Cairo, and then moved to, that was in June, and then it moved to National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. And I just got the numbers yesterday. They estimate about 40,000 came through during the 4 weeks that it was there.
Wow,
see it.
That's very impressive.
One of the things we discovered is in doing these kinds of exhibitions is if we take them out of the traditional art venues, such as galleries or even museums, and the exception would be some really world museums, but you tend to get people that see them that would not normally go to an art initiative, and therefore the audience is much broader. and they begin to engage with it in a different way because it's outside of simply an art place. And so that's one of the interest we have of placing these various exhibitions in cathedrals around the world, because they're not only, of course, religious sites or sacred venues, but they're also cultural venues that reach a broader audience.
Has the public embraced this exhibit as you'd hoped?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, we've had a lot of positive responses and, of course, media coverage, which is always encouraging. It's still there for another, almost 4 weeks in New York City. And I get emails almost daily about expressions of, reflection on them. And there are some that, of course, find them, they wish they were set up differently and all of that. But generally, it's very, very positive.
What has made this exhibit feel like a success? How do you know if you're indeed building bridges between our cultures?
I think the biggest feedback that has come to me that has most impressed me has been from the Muslim imams, because there's something. There's a stereotype in of Islam as being anti-image. Of course, Judaism as well, but especially within Islam in our modern society, people are familiar with that. And to see these imams, not only, for example, in Cairo, not only enjoying the exhibition, but actually in their own way blessing it, endorsing it, what it does is it frees and liberates the Muslim artist. And many of them tend to be more, I would say, I don't necessarily use the word secular, but non-practicing, if you will, in their faith. And yet they sometimes feel the constraints of those that are. And so it kind of opens the door for them in a new way. And that's always been, that's been most encouraging.
I was really impressed by the artists chosen for this exhibit. So many types of visual expressions. How did you go about curating this show?
Yeah, it's a great question. What's happened now, since we've done this for a number of years, is that we have people applying, requesting to be a part of this. We have a kind of a grid or a criterion that we look at, but I think behind it, most of all, is they either have to be a full-time artist. This is their career. And secondly, we try to blend between those that are quite well-known, renowned artists in the Middle East, and those that have shown great promise and are emerging. So we that's kind of a thing where, in a sense, giving younger artists an opportunity to exhibit with well-known artists in a group exhibition, which does not happen a lot in the Middle East. And then a balance of men and women. So it's from notoriety to gender to age, and then, of course, religious as well, meaning a real mixture of Muslim, Christian, and those of Jewish background as well.
Well, I want to commend you and congratulate you on a marvelously public exhibition that also makes you think and feel.
Oh, thank you.
And it sounds like you've been just as successful in your job at bridge building.
That is bridge building, and it also is, it changes really in many ways expressions of modern culture, and it enables some of the artists to think differently and express differently in their own context, which is a side benefit of these exhibitions. One of the things I would say is that we tend to focus on trying to, especially in the Middle East, be as public as possible, get on TV, have bishops and imams, and, of course, in the future, if we're doing anything where there's a Jewish population, rabbis. But because in the Middle East, if they see friendship visibly and publicly on a television, it kind of changes the way they act in their local communities. Because it's an endorsement that it's okay, and so there's all these other ways in which we use the exhibition to have an impact and influence on society. Most interestingly, we have found that it's the Muslim artists that are most that are really wishing to have the exhibition in a cathedral.
That's wild.
Largely because it's a novelty for them, and they see it as more of a sacred space. And it's us actually having to explain to them that in the West nowadays, yes, there is an element of devoted, religiously oriented people that go to a cathedral, but it's also a cultural space, unlike a mosque in the Middle East,
right,
which is very specifically spiritually related, But so that's where it all started from. Were actually the Muslim artists requesting that, and that's how we focused on St. Paul's Cathedral.
Well, listen, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I look forward to the video and look forward to doing more with you in the future. And I'm excited about what you're doing. Thanks for doing this on Saturday, too. That helped me a lot as well.
It's the Sabbath. Don't tell anybody.
Have a good weekend.
You too, Paul.
Take care, Jeff.
This is a wonderful exhibit that all New Yorkers should try to see before Thanksgiving. Perhaps we can all take a moment this holiday season to reflect on how we can build more bridges of understanding with those who seek it. This is Jeffrey Weiner from thegreatnude.tv. Thanks for watching.